The Montana Territory lay before them like a limitless horizon under a sky so big, it seemed to be able to consume every last spark of hope. During the harsh winter of 1882, the cold was unforgiving, coaching breath into frost and rattling even the most hardened men to their very foundations. But for Nathaniel Cross, cold was simply part of the daily routine at Triple Crown Ranch, an empire he had forged out of wilderness with raw determination and an indomitable will. 6'3" in scuffed leather boots, Nathaniel didn't have to command respect. It trailed behind him like a shadow. Dark hair streaked at the temples with silver. His haircut kept short and neat, framed a jawline blade sharp. But it was his eyes, stormy gray and guarded, that disturbed folks most. He was only 35, and already the richest rancher in 3 counties, with thousands of herds and land beyond the horizon. But wealth, he discovered, didn't attract only admiration. It also attracted vultures. In the opulently decorated parlor of the Cross estate, where mahogany shone and crystal chandeliers twinkled like imprisoned stars, another introduction was in progress. This was no unusual event, merely a typical evening of voracious fathers and silk-clad daughters vying to catch the most eligible and elusive bachelor in the territory. "Mr. Cross," boomed Harold Petton, Denver Railroad tycoon. "Meet my daughter, Victoria. She speaks 3 languages and plays the piano like an angel." Victoria moved forward, each aspect of her appearance carefully groomed. Golden hair in meticulous topknot, blue eyes sparkling with practiced radiance. She curtsied elegantly and produced a brilliant smile. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Mr. Cross. Father informs me that yours is the finest ranch in all Montana." Nathaniel didn't glance up from the ledger he was scanning. His pen moved steadily across the paper. "Miss Petton," he answered without raising his eyes. "I'm certain your father's informed you of many things." There was silence like a knife. Victoria's smile faltered. Her father coughed with affected zest. "Her education has been conducted at the best schools. She'd be a first-class wife for a man of your caliber." At last, Nathaniel's eyes rose, his gray eyes flashing like steel. "Would she now? And why do you suppose I am looking for a wife, Mr. Petton?" The air was heavy with the question. Victoria's self-control faltered for an instant, her hands clenching on her skirts. Her father's countenance darkened with anger. "Every man needs a wife, Cross. Somebody to take care of his home, bear his children, ensure his legacy." Nathaniel stood up slowly, each step slow and purposeful. Once on his feet, he appeared to command the room with an aura that was almost thunderous. "My home manages itself," he stated. "My legacy is cast in steel and stone, not the gold of arranged marriages. And children," his tone fell to a whisper, "I won't bring souls into this life to inherit my isolation." Victoria gasped, looking shaken. Her father's face turned from red to purple. "You'll be sorry, Cross. Victoria is the best thing you'll ever have. Lovely, refined, from one of the finest families in the nation." Nathaniel laughed coldly, the sound cutting through the air like shattered glass. "Your daughter is a sweet bauble, Mr. Petton, but I'm not searching for a mantle decoration. I want something authentic, something that can't be purchased or traded over cognac." Harold Petton straightened, still inches shorter than the towering rancher. "You can't live alone forever. One day you'll die bitter and forgotten." "Perhaps," Nathaniel said, turning toward the window that looked out over his vast empire. "But I'll die free." The Pettons departed in a whirlwind of rustling silk and low curses. But they were only the latest name on a long list. For 3 years, the richest families of the territory had been paying the Triple Crown Ranch to send their daughters, confident they had found the woman to tame Nathaniel Cross. There had been Margaret Thornfield, banker's daughter from Billings, fascinated by Paris fashion and afraid of the branding iron. Catherine Westbrook, judge's daughter from Helena, who demanded servants for even the most menial tasks and would not get within 10 feet of the stables. And Elizabeth Cartwright, merchant's heiress from Bozeman, who assessed furniture as investment property and inquired closely into Nathaniel's will. All of them were handsome, all highly educated, all linked. and each had been nicely but firmly dismissed. The routine had become so well established that the ranch hands began making wagers on how long each of the boss's suitors would stay. "Boss sure has a way of sendin' 'em packin'," said Tom Bradley, the old foreman, as he watched the Peton carriage drive down the dusty road. "That's 12 this month," he added. 15, said Miguel Santos, the head wrangler. "Don't leave out the 3 last week." That little blonde wept so much she near drowned in her own handkerchief. The men laughed, but underlying the joke was something more. Concern. They'd worked with Nathaniel for years, seen him construct his empire from scratch, witnessed him go through things no man should go through alone. And they'd seen the way he stood by the window every night, gazing into the wilderness as though it contained answers he could not. "He's a fine man," said Tom. "Fair, strong, and honest with all of us. But there's something gnawing at him. And it ain't just that he don't want no wife." Miguel nodded. "My Maria tells me a man needs more than cattle and property in order to be complete. Tells me he's looking for something those high-flying ladies can't provide him." "What's that?" asked Tom.
"Truth," Miguel answered.
"Those women, they want to be a rich man's wife. But they don't care about the man himself. They notice the mansion, the name, the empire, but not the scars. And the scars were there. Not only the ones acquired through years of backbreaking work, but the unseen kind scoured deep into his psyche. Wounds inflicted by deceit, by loss, by the overwhelming loneliness that hung closer than Montana cold. None of the women noticed the young man who had come here with nothing but a dream and the passion to pursue it. They failed to notice the nights slept under open sky, the hands hardened from hard decisions, the years it took to create a legacy out of dirt and will. Above all, they failed to notice the glimmer of hope that yet existed somewhere deep within him. It was weak, almost smothered by disappointment, but it wouldn't give up. It spoke to him in the quiet moments just before dawn, when even the wind hushed its breath and waited. It told him that perhaps, just perhaps, there was still someone waiting out there who would look beyond the wealth and the legend, and see the man. But as winter wore on, and the queue of suitors lengthened, that delicate hope faded. The women who arrived were perfect, refined, all that a man could wish for. But hollow, their smiles coached, their love conditional, and their eyes never ever sought the truth of who he was inside the legend. Nights when Nathaniel Cross had nearly thought Harold Peton was correct, that he would die bitter, alone, and forgotten. Perhaps what he desired didn't exist beyond the old stories his mother used to tell by lamplight, those tales of love crossing distance and reason. He'd mocked them in his younger days. Now they tormented him. Snow was starting to fall once more, the kind that drifted slow and broad, as if heaven had ripped open a letter and spilled its pages to the ground. Nathaniel was at his window, seeing the white gradually take back his land. The burden of silence fell on his shoulders as it always did, too well known now to call anything other than his constant friend. Tomorrow would arrive with its familiar routine. Another stranger, another hopeful meeting, another disappointment in silk. But this evening, as the fire growled behind him and the wind howled low across the plains, Nathaniel permitted himself to wonder, only for an instant, if perhaps there could be someone out there. Someone who did not like his name or his empire or the legend that people spoke of him. Someone who would not jump at his silence or attempt to tame him with practiced charm. Someone actual. The idea was perilous. Hope always was. It insinuated itself when a man was weary, when the world was still, when the armor was down. He had no right to protect himself with hope. And yet, as snow fell across the porch and darkness clamped around the ranch like a shroud, he couldn't help but think that someone was arriving. Like a storm you couldn't see but could feel against your skin. Change, he thought, may be in the air. The following morning broke with a silence so perfect that even the leaves rustled in sound that traveled for miles. Nathaniel got up before sunrise, just as always, moving through his dark bedroom with the speed of a man who required no light to navigate in the shadows. His habits were uncomplicated, nearly ritualistic. Worn boots that had molded to the cast of his gait. A blue shirt flannel faded to gray with use. a silver buckle on a belt once pinned into his hand by his dying father. The house, large and icy, hardly creaked as he walked through it. Its tall ceilings and foreign wood trim had been intended to awe, but to Nathaniel the place was no home. It was a monument, stone and glory intended to demonstrate. He made his own coffee in the cast-iron pot that had followed him from his initial shack. The sting of it down his gullet was bitter, honest, pain that warned a man he was still alive. Outside, his foreman Tom Bradley was already among the cattle, reliable, unobtrusive, steady as the sun. Tom had been there from the start, before the ranch had a name, before Nathaniel had more than a few head of cattle and a field of stubborn dirt. They talked a lot, but never about anything that counted. Fences, feed, prices. Never the aching silence of the big house. Never the stargazing hours Nathaniel spent standing in the window, wondering what he'd built his walls to keep out or in. The creak of the front door, cold spilling in. Another day, another ritual, another suitor most likely. Nathaniel moved out onto the porch, breath streaming into the air. The snow was deep and unbroken, except for animal prints, and the deep grooves of the carriage wheels that had carried off the petons the day before. Smoke rose from the bunkhouse chimney. Shortly the ranch hands would stir, greet another winter's drudgery. Water to chop from frozen troughs, feed to haul, leather to mend. Nathaniel took a deep breath. He'd always found peace in toil, in the endless, rhythmic calls of ranch life. But today was different, like something had moved, something subtle but certain, in the air. He'd learned to respond to that feeling. It was the same sense that told him sick cattle or thunder were on the way. Something was approaching. Then he heard it, hoofbeats, quiet but definite. He stiffened, already preparing to engage in another smile battle and satin. Another delicate act designed to wow. But as the rider topped the hill, he scowled. This wasn't a fine carriage.
No lace.
No driver.
No escort.
Only one rider on a sturdy, practical paint horse.
No frills. No trim.
The type of mount engineered for endurance, not display. The number was small, wrapped in a worn-out coat repaired with love. A hat strained down against the wind made it difficult to discern the face below. Yet something in the stance, composed, subdued, utterly self-assured in the saddle, compelled Nathaniel to notice.
No vanity. No pretense.
Simply purpose. The rider had climbed down from the horse at the gate, every movement steady and direct.
No swooping gestures.
No effort to attract notice. Only silent competence. Nathaniel stood there, curious despite himself, as the figure roped the horse, then paused for a moment, as if collecting breath, summoning courage, and eventually came forward. It was only as she reached the steps that he understood. She was a woman, not wearing finery, not powdered up, just a woman young, no more than 25, with tan skin and cheekbones etched by the wind. Her coat was unadorned, her boots utilitarian. And yet she exuded something striking, something in the way she stood, something in the way she held herself. Grounded, self-contained, honest. She paused at the bottom of the porch, face upturned under the rim of her hat. Her eyes locked with his, brown, quiet, unflinching. Not the sparkling eyes of an actress playing a role. Just eyes.
Actual.
Mr. Cross? She said quietly but firmly, ringing out into the morning calm like a bell. My name is Sarah Mitchell. I was hoping to see you, if you have a minute.
No flutterine gelasses. No simperin green.
Only a straightforward question presented flat. In earnest, Nathaniel stood there, not responding immediately. He'd become so accustomed to pretense, to being objectified like a prize bull and treated like a locked safe. But this was something else. He searched for the familiar cues, the practiced charm, the calculating look, the ulterior motive behind the words, and found none. Miss Mitchell, he drawled, voice heavy with years of disillusionment. I think you can guess why the majority of young women knock on my door. She smiled. Not the forced smile of one attempting to placate, but something warmer, natural, possibly even a little amused. I do, she replied matter-of-factly. And with that, something shifted. Just slightly, like the first crack in a frozen river. Barely there, but unmistakable. I imagine they come hoping to marry you, the woman said plainly. But that's not why I'm here. The words hit Nathaniel like a hammer blow, so raw and sudden that he took an unconscious step back. No one had ever started to speak with such blunt candor in 3 long years of receiving an endless stream of suitors. Everyone else dallied about their intentions with insincere praise, faking admiration as their eyes weighed him like a prize. But this woman had just cut through all of that. Then why are you here? He demanded, the sharpness in his tone defying greater surprise than curiosity. Sarah Mitchell looked at him steadily, her brown eyes flat and unreadable. Because I've heard stories about you, Mr. Cross, and I think you may have an idea of what it's like to be properly alone. Her words hung between them, soft but heavy, and something deep within Nathaniel changed, something he'd locked deep behind iron doors. This woman, standing on the edge of his porch like an unknown he couldn't quite respond to, had pierced the fortress he'd built over time. She saw not the myth but the isolation behind it. And why do you suppose, he asked slowly, that I'd be interested in talking about something like this with a stranger? Her smile went deeper, and for the first time, he saw how it flooded her whole face, transforming it from bland to softly striking. Because I don't think anybody's knocked on your door in a long while without attempting to take something from you. And I think, maybe, you wonder what it's like when somebody comes knocking with the hope of giving something instead. Nathaniel sensed her words like lightning tearing through a black sky. For one gasping instant, he didn't know what to say, couldn't even draw breath. She was different from the others. She wasn't attempting to charm or toady to him. She wasn't peddling something. And in a world where so many people saw his name and land first, and only then his eyes, this woman had somehow looked. Give me something? He repeated, his tone low and barely audible. And what could you possibly have that I need? Sarah moved slightly, her boots crunching in the snow. She did not fidget, did not preen. She simply stood there like she had all the time in the world to tell what was important. Understanding, she said softly. The kind that never comes with expectations or a list of things you must change. The kind that demands nothing, but remains. His usual defenses began to crumble word by word. 3 years of practiced indifference, 3 years of rehearsed rejection, suddenly felt brittle and hollow. She wasn't trying to be chosen. She wasn't performing. You don't know me, he said, but even his doubt had lost its edge. I don't know how to do this, he admitted. I've forgotten how to let someone in. Then we'll learn together, Sarah said, gently taking his hand. Her touch was genuine, earthy, sincere. And in that fleeting moment, something new unfolded. While the snow fell softly and the fire died low, Nathaniel understood that some of life's greatest treasures come not in huge gestures, but in the gentle form of someone who is willing to sit with you in the dark, not to drag you out, but to remain until you are ready to move back into the light. The wealthy, isolated cowboy who had rejected every bride had finally discovered something he never anticipated. Not a woman to make him whole, but a friend to walk alongside him. Partner not in wholeness, but in healing. And in the warm peace of a Montana kitchen, beneath an endless winter sky, 2 tired hearts came to beat as one. Not loudly, not theatrically, but in the steady beat of a new beginning.